Those who have just joined, give the attendance for today's session by the participants are joining. Okay, welcome all. We will just share the presentation with you. As participants are joining, it's a little delay in the presentation.
To the online lecture series of high.
Now, as far as FDS is been concerned, we have these 6 units. The first is dedicated to algorithm and data structures. Next is linear data structures using sequential organization. The third unit is dedicated to searching and sorting, whereas the fourth unit is concerned with linked list. Fifth is stack, that is LIFO, last in first out memory organization, and the last is queues. Now over here, in every unit we will be discussing about the case studies, that is case studies which is defined after every lecture or every unit. So in every lecture we will have the case study discussions. That means you have to complete the case study. In unit 1 we have fast multiplication as the case study. So I recommend all of you that you can develop some tutorial for fast multiplication. You may have different notes on that. Second is unit 2, that is linear data structures in sequential organization. We have various case studies on sparse matrix, economic growth pattern using polynomial, medical research use of data structure to describe behavior of COVID-19 virus. In unit 3, we have case studies on Fibonacci series, time sort as hybrid table sorting algorithm. Okay, then the next unit, that is unit number 4, which is dedicated to linked list. We have to study the case studies for garbage collections. It is related to memory, and when we create dynamic memories, this is the need of dynamic memory allocation and one of the advantage of it. Whereas in unit 5 we have LIFO, that is last in first out stack. In that we have studies related to a simple game, that is Tower of Hanoi 4 queen problem, where we have to arrange the 4 queens. Okay, where we have to arrange the 4 queens in such a way that they will not attack each other. So that was related to 4 queen problem. And we have Android multitasking or activities and backstack as case study. You can choose any of them when unit 4 is being discussed. Finally, we have Q in the 6th unit, and the case study is very interesting. That is, we have to study on priority queues in bandwidth management. So bandwidth is related to network data transfer. So how bandwidth management can be done using priority queues will be case study in unit 6. Now, as far as PPS is been concerned, which I studied in first year, here also there is a problem. So the problem is related to algorithmic solutions and heuristic solutions. These heuristic solutions is concerned with artificial intelligence. One second, if somebody has joined. Okay. So where algorithm solution is been concerned, we think simple, that it is step by step execution of of a generic model of a program where we need some specific and accurate information for executing algorithmic solutions. For example, if you want to calculate the salary of a person, then its basics, per day wages, and number of days he has filled in the month must be clearly specified for gaining better accuracy. Similarly, in banks, we calculate simple interest, and such kind of examples are correlated to algorithmic solutions. Now, let us go for what is heuristic solutions. They are based on reasoning capability and have approximation. That means your answer is nearby correct. Hello. Okay. Is it clearer now? Is the voice clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So, heuristic solutions are a little difficult, but when we are able to solve algorithmic solutions, then we will see how heuristic problems can be solved. The basic example of heuristic is to find the person's location from either GPS system using longitude and latitude. So we get some approximate answer that location is within this radius of some meters or so. So over here, the accuracy is not important, but the approximate answer is very essential. So AI concerned with reasoning and approximation. Someone is just joined. Fine. Now let us move to the basic algorithm. So it is generic step that I use to solve problem. So what we say about generic step, that means it is applicable to nearly about all types of languages. And over here we discuss about any language. The algorithm is applicable to n number of languages. So once it is written for once it is written in plain English for the programmer, it is applicable to all of them. So if you write an algorithm in plain English, it is understandable by a C++ programmer, Java programmer, .NET programmer, or even your Python programmer. Therefore, we say the algorithm must be generic, and for that purpose, we have given the simple model. That means in any language, the simple interest will follow the same formula, that is principal into rate of interest into duration, that is time, divided by 100. Now over here the time is estimated in number of years. Now you can observe that the algorithm is dependent on some factors. What are they? To calculate the SI, we must know the following information. That means we must have the input as principal amount. Then we have the information about how much year the interest is to be given and at what rate the interest is then applicable. Without any of those information, it is very difficult to estimate or evaluate simple interest. So, when we do algorithm analysis, we find what is the dependency. That means what is the input, what processing method are required. That means the formula for evaluation of SI. If you don't know the formula of SI, you cannot process or develop any algorithm for calculating of SI. So over here, we should also know the processing information, and the most important is you must have some outcome. Whether you have 1 or 0 inputs, whether you don't have any processing, but your algorithm must have at least one output. It should be simple and it is expected that it is understandable by all without having ambiguities. Now taking the same example of algorithmic coding, you just revise and you observe the inputs now properly. So over here we have the start statement as the first statement and stop as the last statement. Now the second statement, we are accepting inputs. The first is value for principal, and the last point over there you can see the value unit is RS, rupees. Now sometimes if you are creating a software for international level, then this term RS may be changed to dollars or the country specific currency symbol we can say. So we have written RS as a separate unit. Then second, we have interest and it is to be specified in terms of percentage. So we can see that the algorithm gives us a clear view about the units of the inputs. This information is very important to getting inputs. I could have just written except P, R and T. That would be the confusion one. Then last one is except duration in years. So it is clearly mentioned that we have to write the years in either 1.2, 2 years, 3 years and so on. Now the fifth statement, you can see that we have evaluated the SI as per the given formula. This is just pure mathematics. The last line is either we are going to display the simple interest or we are going to return the value of it for further processing. So when you write the algorithms, it must give you a clear view of the input and the units so that the person who is using the software get pure knowledge about what is to be entered. For example, instead of RS, your data is written in some dollars, then there will be a currency transformation requirement. 1 second, someone has joined. Fine. Now, when we are completed with algorithms, let's come to flowchart. We will not discuss too much of this because it is covered in first year. Relevant to the start and stop, we have the start symbol and the stop symbol at the end. Now over here, the inputs are accepted by the input symbol. You can see the parallel prepared for the input symbol. The processing is done in the rectangle symbol, and finally the output is same as the input symbol. Over here we can see that there are sequential steps from start to stop. Therefore, such algorithms are termed as sequential algorithms. And the route from start to stop has no dependencies. Everything else is covered from start to stop. So you can say the flowchart is a pictorial representation of an algorithm. We can have control statements such as if, and loop statements in algorithm. So as we move forward, we will study that also. Now moving next, you can observe the data patterns. So line number 1 is something ABCD, 1, 2, 3, 4, and some 10 patterns, 10, 10.10, and we have some mixed data. So all these 1 to 7 are termed as data. So when you don't know anything about that, you don't have any information about what is this ABCD, what is this 1, 2, 3, 4, we simply say that is a data. Now let us move to some data classification. So the first data is ABCD. We classified it. It is a text or string, or we can say it is a character data. This is very important. Now let's see 1, 2, 3. We termed it as numeric data or integer data. Next, third one is binary data, or we can say it is a numeric data. Now fourth one is decimal number. You can also call them as real numbers or floating point data. Fifth will increase our complexity. We are not able to understand what it is. So it is mixed data. So when data is mixed with characters and some symbols, special symbol is dollar, and some numbers, we call it as mixed data string containing text, symbol and numbers. Now little tricks, that is the sixth one. You can see it is email ID format. So some name followed by the domain name. So we called such a data as a structured data. 1 second, someone has joined. Okay, so why we call this as a structured data? We simply see that it has some specific format. That is, you have some login name before the @ symbol, and then there is a domain. Domain name is there. So example is gmail.com and so on. We say that it is a structured data. It has some specific format. Now let us see the seventh, that is the image or picture. So when we talk about image or picture, we don't get any information from picture. Human predicted based on his internal knowledge. That means he classify the image, that the image is about nature or some road, some building, and some human beings. But in sense of computation, we say it is an unstructured data which doesn't have specific format to predict the information in the picture. So such kind of data is very difficult for processing. So predicting information from such data is very complex. Therefore, we have studied now that there are two types of data at least. One is structured data and another is unstructured data. It is very good to understand structured data and it is very difficult to understand unstructured data. Unstructured data are sometimes called as raw data. We have given just basic information about what is data. Now let us understand what is data structures. Over here we are just beginning with the data structure. Now we have two types over here. One is the built-in data types, another is the user-defined data types. As far as the syllabus is been concerned, we will be creating our own data types in C or Python. So let us first understand what are the significance and internal details of a data structure. So formation of data into structured manner. So whenever we say structured manner, you just remember that email ID example. So when data is formulated in structured manner so that it can be converted to information. So computer will convert your raw data into information for information processing. Whenever you do programming, you are processing some kind of information or data. Let us assume we have written x is equal to 10, line number 2. It simply means x has a value 10. Now what you can say about 10? Either 10 units, 10 rupees, $10 or n number of outcomes. So we say that it is a data which has the value 10. But when we say int x is equal to 10, it simply means x is an integer data type and its value is 10. Now from these two examples, we estimate two informations. Line number 4, whenever a value is given, it directly impacts the quantity which is assigned to a particular variable. So when we say value, it is concerned with quantity. And when we say it is an integer data type, then we should remember that it estimates us the memory requirement. So when we say an integer data type, it directly estimates us that we require some memory or some amount of RAM to execute your program. To calculate the amount of memory requirement in your program, we estimate the data types. Let us see with some good examples. Now we are preparing some user-defined data type. The user or the object over here is a student. So we are storing information of student. So for one student information, we are storing the roll number, name, date of birth, qualification, address, and etc. So at least these are the basic information we will be going to store for one student. How to tabulate this? So you can see a table above. We have roll number 1 and 2. The name of roll number 1 is S1. Name of roll number 2 is S2. Similarly, we have date of birth in the format DDMMYY. So when I say that it is in the format DDMMYY, actually it is a structured data. Okay. Then next is qualification. So we have given 12th as a qualification and the address is Pune for S1. Similarly, Satara is the address for S2. Now read the last line. So when we have valuable or meaningful data, it is termed as information. You can see the definition of information. It is meaningful data. So when we say what is S2, you can refer to the column that name. S2 is the name of the student. Now what is this 11 to 2002? So we can refer to the column that is it is the date of birth of the student. Okay. So this data is giving information to us. So whenever you design data structure and you assign the values to them, it gives us meaning. What is the data about? And you can see the second table, which is a plain data, where the headers are removed. 1, 2, you can just imagine that either they are serial numbers or something. We cannot predict what is S1 and S2. We can predict N1 2001 is some date, but which date it is? Either admission date, joining date, or leaving date. So it is not clear from the table. It is just a plain date. Similarly, we have 12th and we have Pune. So removing the header, we find there is lots of confusion. And if you put the headers, we get the clear information about the data structure. So over here in data structure, we first define the headers and then create an instance of that structure, either an object or a variable resembling to the data structure, and then assign values to them. So we can say record number 1 belongs to student 1. So roll number 1 S1, date of birth is 10/1/2001 and so on. So arranging of data is very significant using data structure. You can see data structure is nothing but organizing the data, storing data, setting up relations for easy access and modification of data. So we see we want the record for roll number 2. So directly we'll find or search roll number is equal to 2 and we can get the information about everything about roll number 2. So this is easy access of data due to the mapping of roll number with roll number 2. The value is 2 and roll number is the header. Find student name where roll number is 2. So any type of queries is possible. In general life, we can say there are various softwares. When you insert a particular phone number, they will give you the name of the person. This is all mapping of data. The phone number is mapped with a data structure that includes name. Whenever you enter the phone number, you will get the name easily. So using data structures, we can find the contents of a record very easily. Can we say that record is a structured organization of a data structure? Yes, indeed. Now, if you want to change or modify, it is also possible to go to that directly record and update the contents. We will see this as we move forward in this section. Now let us move forward. Okay, this is as far as references is concerned. Now I'll share another screen over here. I request all the participants by the time I prepare the presentation for you, you just give the attendance for today's session. Just a minute. So I'll be back in a minute. So in every lecture there will be some reminder about case studies. Okay, now let us come to the topic. Over here we have object and variables. We have seen the example of data structures in PPS. By using class, we associate the attributes of the class with the functions and create the instance of the class, that is object. So over here we again discuss about int x is equal to 20. Now going to deeper into the data types. So we over here say that int is concerned with a system defined data type, and we learned that whenever we are discussing about data types, it is concerned with some memory. So what memory requirements are there for integer data type? Let us see. Okay. So the main topic which is asked in every university paper 90 times, 900 times you can say. So this is ADT, that is abstract data type. So what is this abstract data type? Is hiding essential information and and providing some internal details. For example, we have some data types, that is integer, float, character, and so on. One second, I'll tell you.
Hello?
Okay, participant. Fine. So you just observe the first column, that is data type. Over here you can see that it has various options, that is INT 8, INT 16, INT 32 and INT 64. In practice, we all called it as integer data type. So when we say INT 8, it is an 8-bit data type storing integer data. INT 16 is 16-bit data or 8-byte data. Further is INT 32, that means it is 32-bit data. And finally we have 64, that is 64-bit data or 8 bytes data. Now, as we say that integer data type or any user defined data type is associated with memory, you can see the memory required or the size of the data type. So INT 8 is of 1 byte, that is 1 byte is equal to 8 bits. Therefore, you can see the range of that. That means you can store minus 128 to plus 127. That means any value within this range is accepted by INT 8, and the application of it is used to store some count the number of students in a class. For example, in any class currently we will have maximum 100 students or around 60 to 80 students maximum. So we can say that INT 8 is useful to count such a quantity which has a limit less than 127. So we have a purpose of this. Now suppose I use INT 16, that is of 2 bytes. You can see the range is minus 32k to plus 32k. Okay, so it is minus 32768 to plus 32768. Now I am going to use only 100 of that. 100 roll numbers are there. Then what is the use of another space? So that is wastage of space in computation. So we have to estimate accurate data. INT INT 32. It is a 32-bit operating system. So when you use people 32-bit instructions, then we should assume that we have a 32-bit operating system installed or a higher version of it. Naturally, in today's operating system, we find Windows 10 and Windows 7 are 64-bit operating systems which are available recently. So over here, when we define integer, it may be of INT 64 bytes, that is 8 bytes. So it is compiler specific. The memory requirement which is correlated to your data type is compiler specific. In old compilers, when we write integers, that was of 2 bytes. So we can say that is a 16-bit operating system, and at present we have INT 64. You can see the huge data range which is not even readable by humans very easily. So I recommend you to remember at least INT 32 range. You can remember it very easily if you classify it. Now, based on these figures, you might have understand how it is associated with memory. Now let's move to another data type. Okay, so you can see that abstract data type provide only essential information. Similarly, information is available for other data types. For example, float 16, float 32, and float 64. I have not written float 8 over here because float resembles a minimum value of 2 bytes and it has a classification that in 2 bytes there are 16 bits and over there 10 bits are for mantissa and 5 bits are for exponent. So there are total 15 bits over here and one is the sign bit, that is for either indicate a positive or negative sign. So there are utilization of 16 bits in float. Naturally, when we have float 32, we have float single precision, which is of 3 bytes. Memory requirement for float 32 is 3 bytes. Its mantissa is 23 bit and 8 bit exponent. You can note down, this comes in MCQ. What is the size of float 32? So it is 3 bytes and not 4 bytes. Similarly, we have float 64, which is also called as double precision float, and size is 8 bytes, which stores the data in the range 52-bit mantissa and 11-bit exponent, which is quite suitable for 64-bit applications. Now all this floating point information and integer 8, 16, 32 or float 16, 32 and 64 are associated with NumPy data types in Python. We have referred the NumPy data types in Python. Now, as far as ASCII characters are concerned, we require 1 byte of memory per character. So you have to remember that in ASCII characters we have 1 byte per character, and students are informed to collect relevant information for various languages. So what is the data type size for C program, C++ program or Java and Python? So this varies. You can create a table for that and see vary based on the size and based on the language. Yes, participants able to view the screen.
Yes, sir.
Storing information of student data. Okay, now this table is very significant. One second. So over here we have the first column relevant to the headers or variables in the data type. We are using the student information system. The attributes are roll number, name, date of birth, qualification, address, and finally we have sum them. That is, there are total 5 attributes for there. Now, uh, is the voice coming? Now,
Yes,
as
sir.
far as second column is concerned, view the data type. So that we have uint8. So u means unsigned. That means there is no plus or minus. They are all positive. You can see the range has modified for 1 byte. It was minus 128 to plus 187. Now removing the minus sign and adding both of them, we get 255. So unsigned means there is no negative sign, only positive numbers are concerned. So all numbers from 0 to infinity are positive numbers. So 1 byte can store maximum 256 characters. That means 256 bits data. So we can say it can be used for storing numbers, or you can create to store some symbol or characters, ASCII characters you can say. Next is attribute name. So we can look at the row name. This data type is character. Now to store any person name, I think 20 characters are sufficient to store any person's name. Therefore, we have one character is equal to 1 byte, and since we require 20 character of data, so we write 1 into 20 is equal to 20 bytes. We store name in 20 characters as maximum. Now what will happen? If my name size is 10 characters, so 10 characters data is wasted. That is, memory is not utilized. That is the flaw in such of static assignment. Now let us move to the date of birth. The data type is date, and generally it requires 4 to 8 bytes of memory. Depends on the compiler again. Then we say that date is formatted as structured data. Then we have some format, that is DDMMYY, and maximum it can be considered with 8 bytes, and 8 byte data string you can store it is in the form of 8 byte string. Next is the qualification. Again we say it is a character data or string data. Qualification can take maximum 20 characters. So we assign 20 characters. So 1 byte into 20 characters, that is 20 bytes maximum requirement. Moving to address, so we write address in a mixed format. Either some number, survey number is there, flat number is there, house number is there, and some location. So it is a mixed data, and therefore we term it is string. We assign approximately 100 characters, that is 100 bytes. That will be sufficient for storing the address. Therefore, we assign 1 into 100 bytes for storing the address. Now, let us calculate all the details. So, you can look at the last column after address. Total attributes of 5. Now, looking at uint, character, date, and character, all these constitute mixed data type. It is not a continuous or array-like data structure. Similar data type, it is a mixed data type. Now let us estimate the memory requirement. To store the roll number, we require a 1 byte memory. Then to store name, 20 bytes. Then we require 8 bytes maximum. Then we require 20 bytes for qualification and 100 bytes for address. In total, we can find 148 plus 1, that is 149 bytes. To store a student information in memory, we will at least require 149 bytes for one student. Now, if we have 100 students data to be processed, then we will require 100 into 149 bytes, that is total 14,900 bytes minimum memory requirement for data storage in your program. Are you getting the significance of memory estimation? Yes, participants?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So now it is not the term of I am writing a program. I am writing some memory efficient program. Is the skill which is getting by the programmer as we move to the higher version and understanding the program deeper and deeper. So when we say I have to store a student record of an entire college, and the college may constitute about 1,000 of students, so you have to calculate what 149 bytes into 1,000 bytes, that will be the minimum memory requirement. Now these were as far as the memory requirement for a college itself. Now what about the university? Let's say the university contains lakhs of users or lakhs of students, and you have to store process the data of this lakh students. So how much memory will be required? It will be 149 into 1 lakh bytes. That is the memory. Okay. Limited to memory, we have to divide the program into multi-parts for processing. That is the skill when we develop programs for a huge processing system or a huge project. Taking a simple example of finding a book on Google. How much database is there in the world for books? There may be millions of books, and from that books, we are going to find the data. So how much is the memory requirement? It goes very, very difficult. So we need to organize the data in the form of data structure and access the data part by part so that it will be accessible easily, and we can modify the content or search them efficiently. This is the significance as far as data structure has been concerned. So as far as today's section is concerned, we have discussed the significance of data structures and abstract data type. So in the upcoming session, we will clearly move on abstract data types. Thank you for being patient and listening the session. Any questions on current session? Yes, participants?
No, sir.
So I hope you understand the lecture. Those who have not given attendance, I have shared the link on the group, and there is a lecture code. So you can put the lecture code over there, the code provider section. Every lecture will have a different lecture code. Thank you very much. We'll end up the session over here. Thank you.